All right, let's talk about JavaScript, bar versus let versus const. So let me present you a problem. So historically speaking, whenever you wanted to create a variable in JavaScript, the only way, the only route was essentially using bar, the bar keyword. Yeah, not sure how familiar the bar keyword is these days anymore, because essentially it's been softly replaced by let mainly. But historically speaking, let's first introduce bar. Yeah, so you get a variable called bar, username equals Peter, and then of course you can do console.log username. Yeah, so when we run that piece of code, that displays Peter. Yeah. Uh, but now we got let, so you can create a variable called with let as well. And if you run that code, it works. And also we got const. So can I create a variable using const? Let's have a look. So when I run it, it works too, right? So even though in some occasions we may change between bar let and const without any side effects, it goes without saying that under other circumstances, the difference may be vital. Let's first of all talk about const, because I think let and bar are harder to distinguish, but const I think is more natural to deal with compared to the other. So if I have a variable called username and I'm creating it using const, can I do username equal Mari? Will that work? No, no. That will throw an error. Pay attention to the console at the bottom. You see? Username equal Mari, assignment to constant variable. So that's the first thing about constants. Yeah? Once you declare it, you cannot change it afterwards. Yeah? But how strict that rule is. If I got a string, fine, I cannot change it. If I got a number, that won't work neither, right? Because I'm updating the variable. The point is, what if I do that? So if I have a variable called user and then use name Peter. So can I now do user.name equal Mari? Would this work? So Adam thinks that works. What about the others, guys? What do you think? Okay, so you all agree on that. So you are right, guys. You are right. So, but don't you think that's a bit controversial? I mean, I'm creating a variable called user. That's my user. It's a JavaScript object, and at some point, I'm updating some bits. Yeah, I'm partially modifying my user object, and it works, as you can see. It works fine. So be careful, because defining a constant doesn't imply that your object, and the same rule applies to arrays, cannot change at all. That's not true. That's not true. Yeah, you can change individual properties of the object. The only thing you cannot do is reassigning it. That shouldn't work. You see? That shouldn't work. Oh, sorry, not user.name. Like that. User equal name Mari. Yeah, you see? So you cannot use the equal symbol, let's say. Yeah, you cannot reassign. Why? Because you remember, guys, an object is essentially a reference to an address in memory of your system, right? So if I use user equals whatever, I'm pointing to a new address on my system. That's not correct. However, updating a property of the object is not creating any new address on my system. It's just updating a value on that individual address. That's why this is valid. Personally, I find that piece of code a bit misleading. That's confusing, guys. That's confusing. So when I declare a constant, regardless of whether I can break my rules immediately afterwards, when I declare a constant, I'm sending a message to the other developers like, hey, this is not gonna change. This is not gonna change. So for instance, if I have something like days a week, so I mean, this is gonna be 7, right? I'm not planning to change the number of days a week has. This is a constant, right? So that's the message. Ignoring the technicalities, ignoring whether I can find a way to get rid of that restriction, the message I'm saying to other developers is, hey, this is not gonna change. I'm not supposed to do that, so I would never do that. If I wanted to do that, I will use something else like let or bar, as we'll see in a minute. And the same thing applies with arrays. So if I have an array of users in plural, so if I got, first of all, Mary and then Peter, so of course, I cannot change them again. Yep, that's not correct. That won't work because we are reassigning the users array. That will throw an error, you see. Assignment to a constant variable. Assignment, guys, assignment is the keyword because of the equal symbol. However, guys, can I update an individual element of the array? What do you think? Yes, the same thing, right? It's the same as objects. It's the same as objects. You can see it's valid to update individual parts of the array. That's it about constants. So do you have any questions? The same thing applies to functions. The same thing applies to functions. So you want me to create a function called get user? No. Yeah. Users. Yeah. And then what? Well, a function. Yeah, that's what I want. So uh, right. So now what do you want? What else do you want me to do? So I got the users, which is, let me rename it, guys, to get users. That's a variable, right? So are you thinking whether I can reassign it so I can call it me computer, for instance, something like that? That shouldn't work, guys. That's not correct. That's not correct because as you can see here, I'm reassigning the entire variable. So you see, this is the same criteria. Yeah, you cannot reassign the variable completely, regardless of whether it's an object, an array, string, number, whatever. Yeah, that will never work. Can I redeclare it, guys? Can I do that? No, you're right, Ian. That won't work neither. Yeah, identifier get users has already been declared. Yeah, so you cannot do that neither. So I mean, you see, dealing with const is pretty simple. Const is a variable that you cannot change, not you cannot reassign completely, even though you can. If we are dealing about complex data structures like arrays or objects, you can, even though you shouldn't, but technically speaking, you can modify parts of that data structure. Any questions, guys, about constants? What is the scope of const? That's a good question. So let's create a function. Get user one, right? And then let's create another function, get user two. So get user one and const user equal Peter return user, right? And then user Mari, and then yeah, something like that. So is that, guys, is that correct? We have the same variable declared twice, right? What do you think? Yep. Yeah, that's correct, guys. You're right. You're right. Why? Even though, yes, the variable is the same, they work on different scopes. They work at different functions. We'll talk in a minute, Adam, about some technicalities when talking about the scopes. What's a block scope? What's a function scope? But at least for now, you can see that obviously, yeah, as far as your variables are declared in different functions, you are safe. It would be very weird, guys. Do you imagine? Do you imagine that instead of having a playground, we have 2,000 files, and tomorrow I create a new file, and I have no idea. It's my first day on that company, so I create a new file like that, and then JavaScript throws an error. Hey, you cannot use the variable user because someone else 10 years ago already used it in a different file, in a different. No, that's bullshit, right? That's not the way it works. Thankfully. So variables have to simplify things. To simplify things, at least keep in mind that you can declare new variables, of course, as far as they belong to different functions. Anything else, guys? To me, the main thing about const is that is not very strict when talking about data manipulation. So the main concern is when dealing with objects and arrays, Adam. Because to me, if you get a question in a job interview, is that code valid? Yes. I mean that valid in terms of syntactically speaking. That won't throw any error. However, from a human point of view, but that's controversial. I don't want to say that's wrong, but I would tend to avoid writing that snippet because from a readability point of view, I'm sending a confusing message. Is the user a constant? I mean, if it's a constant, it's something that is not going to change, right? Why is it suddenly changing one line below? I don't know. That's just at least controversial. Let's leave it there. Anything else, guys, about constants? Hello? Cool. Thank you very much. So now let's present bar versus let. Bar and let. So the first thing is if we group bar and let compared to constants, yes, both bar and let can change easily. So if I got user Peter and then user equal Mary, so if I do console.log of user and I run this code, you see that works, right? And same thing applies to let. So that's the first obvious difference between let plus bar and const. Const cannot change, or not that easily at least. However, bar and let they can change easily. And now the question is, what's the difference between bar and let? There are two differences. The first one is very obvious. The second one is not that obvious. So the first difference is when you use bar. By the way, bar is the oldest way, as I said before, to create a variable. It was introduced in where? 1995 maybe? I don't know, many long time ago, right? So if I create a variable using bar, it is okay. I'm not saying if it's acceptable or not, but technically speaking, it's okay to redeclare it. You see? I call bar user, Peter, and then immediately afterwards bar user equal Anne. So if I run this code, you see that works. Yeah. So that's technically speaking valid. Yeah, I can redeclare the same variable using bar. However, that doesn't work with let. Let, firstly introduced in 2015, introduced that limitation. That code shouldn't work. It shouldn't work. Yeah? The first line is okay. I create a variable user equal Peter, but then I try to redeclare it. That should throw an error. Let's have a look. Here you go. You see? Identifier user has already been declared. So that's the first difference. That's the easiest one. Yeah. Once you declare a variable, you cannot redeclare it on that function, guys. On that function, it goes without saying. Once again, you remember the example with two users, right? Of course, if I on the first one I got user equal Peter, and then I can create another one here, right? It goes without saying that code is absolutely valid because I'm redeclaring the function I'm redeclaring the variable user as part of a different function. So that's absolutely fine. So that's the first difference. The second difference is harder to deal with. The second difference is about scoping. The scope on bar is slightly different to the scope on LED. Uh, to me, this is much simpler to explain with an example than talking about theory and technicalities. Let me present you a problem. Imagine that I got a for loop. So for bar I equals 0, I is less than, I don't know, 3 I plus plus, and then do console.log the value of I is whatever, yeah? The value of I in the loop, the value of I is, and now out the loop, the value of I, something like that. So, guys, do you want to add some breakpoints? Yes, of course, I want to add some breakpoints. Okay, let's do that. So I got, that's pretty simple, right? But just for testing purposes. So can you tell me what's the execution order? Adam? 225. 2225. Okay. Anyone else? Panos, Ian, Dan, Minji, Ebrima. Hello, guys. You okay? Easy peasy. All right, cool. Thank you, Adam. You get 2 points on the board challenge for this week, right? That's correct. So why I'm doing that? Why I'm doing that? Because I want you. Because first of all, you understood the execution order, which is great. So can anybody tell me what's the value of I on line number 5? It's 3. Okay, let's have a look. Let's have a look, Minji. Let's run this code. No, it's not 3. I don't know. It's okay. Okay, cool. So Minji said I equal 2. Do you agree on that, guys, or not? Ian, interesting, said I will be 0. Interesting. I think that was Panos, right? I equal undefined. So Dan, Ebrima, and Adam. What's the value of I? Interestingly, everyone said something different, so that's really cool. Okay, Ebrima and Adam. No, Adam. Sorry. Dan, I equals undefined. Ebrima, any thoughts? He disconnected. Okay, cool. Nice. All right. Only one person gave the right answer. And that means that if it's one person, Panos and Dan are wrong, right? Because otherwise it will be 2 people. So Adam is right once again, guys. Yes. So let's try to read the code. Let me add some breakpoints actually. Let's run it. Yeah, step by step. So at the beginning, it should stop on line number 2. Here you go. You see, I like DevTools. Sorry, not DevTools. I like debugging on VS Code, guys. It's very reliable. I don't care, guys, about dealing with complex software. To me, the worst thing, you know, sometimes, and that will happen to you guys, at some point in your life, a company will ask you to do a bit of research on a new technology, you know, new frameworks, because this is a live world, right? And they will give you, I don't know, 1 week to play with different technologies, which is great. I really enjoy, I'm sure you will enjoy at some point that as well, because you got a lot of freedom to play, to practice, to search on the documentation, all these things, right? To me, there is one reason to immediately discard a technology. I don't care. Well, I do care, but to me, dealing with complex software is not a big problem. because eventually you learn how to use it, right? Of course, if it's easier, much better. But you know, it's not a no-go. It's not a no-go. I remember the first time I dealt with Angular, it was a nightmare. But the problem is not about the complexity of the software. It's about the reliability. If I run a piece of software 3 times without changing the input, it should return the same output. In other words, if I run this algorithm, whatever it returns, if I'm wrong, and the result is I equals 27, it should say that I equals 27 consistently. If the first time returns I equals 27, the second time returns I equals 4. You know, that sort of unexpected behavior of the algorithm, to me, that's the worst part of software because it's much harder to predict. So let's see how predictable this algorithm is. So first of all, we stop on line number 2, I equals 0. Then we increment I, you see, in the loop, the value of I equals 0. On the next iteration, I equals 1. In the loop, I equals 1. So we'll do one more round with I equals 2. But now, after I equals 2, I will be incremented to 3. And guys, as you can imagine, is 3 less than 3? Clearly not. So we'll stop, we'll finish the loop, and then we will stop on the final console.log. And now the question is, what's the value of I? Pay attention, guys. Look at how Adam managed to solve the problem. It's 3. And why it is 3 and not 1 and not 2 and not 0, not undefined and not whatever? The reason is, when you declare a variable using var, like I did here, it gets hoisted. I mean, you may come across that the technical principle at some point. It gets how to explain that? It is available on the entire function where that function runs, where that piece of code runs. It is true, I don't have any function here. So as you may imagine, when you don't have any function, then the variable gets available on the global scope. To make the example a bit more realistic, let's create a function. Function do stuff if you want. Yeah, the semantics are a bit weird, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So if I call do stuff at the bottom, the var I variable, even though it's declared as part of that for loop, yeah, it's available on the whole function. Yeah? So I can display the value at anywhere on that function. You see, out the loop, the value of I is 3. However, pay attention, guys. Pay attention to the consequence of replacing var with let. That's not gonna work. Let me tell you why before I run it. When you use let, the scope of the variable is not the function. It's not the function scope. The scope of the variable is the block. The block means the closest curly braces where you are using it. Yeah? So, in other words, I will work inside of that block scope, but it won't be available outside. So if I run that code, actually, let me rename I with another variable name. So let me rename it to X, for instance. So because I want to start from scratch, so X, yeah. So now my variable is called X. So if I have a variable called X and I run it, that should throw an error. Here you go. You see? In the loop is okay. So line number 4 runs smoothly. However, as soon as we try to display out the loop, you see the value is X. And what is X? X is not defined because let shrinks the scope of the variable only to the block scope, which is, in the case of the for loop, whatever runs inside of the for loop, but not outside. And that's it. That's the main difference. So, questions? It's all good, guys. Cool. Yeah. You see, it's not that complicated. The main reason why we are dealing with that, I mean, you are not likely to deal with a similar problem on a daily basis, of course not. Yeah. But it's important to understand the differences. First of all, because many employers ask that question as part of a job interview. What's the difference between bar, let, and const? So just make sure you master this process. First of all, doing two sides, yeah, separating const versus the others. And then when talking about the details between bar and let, remember the first difference is bar can be really clear while let cannot on the same scope. And the second difference is the scope. Bar plays at function scope while let runs at block scope. Yep, so guys, that's pretty much it. I don't think you have any other questions. So, yep, let's leave it here. Let's do a 5 minutes break and then let's talk about unit testing. So, yep, thank you for watching.